What's up, family? What's up? What's up? What's up? Did some homework today. Hope that this inspires you to use the information age or the age of information to enhance your knowledge because there is definitely something going on out here above our basic level of comprehension. We have got to find out how these interactions that go south with these police, um, how we can be more aware of what our rights are when it comes time for you or I or our children to interact with police. So I live in Kansas City, Missouri. If you are a resident of Kansas City, Missouri, you can go to kcpd.org. It has a list of policies and procedures that these officers have to follow that are listed on this website. But a couple of different things I wanted to talk about and point out when I was reading through, Section 201 regarding the police officers' code of ethics. In Section E, it talks about the performance of these officers' duties. It says that these officers are supposed to be members of the police force that treat all citizens equal with courtesy, consideration, and dignity. um, Number two, it says that the officer or members of the police force will never allow personal feelings to influence their conduct. Now, I was a participant down at these rallies, protests, revolts, rebellions, and I can tell you unequivocally that did not happen. I seen protesters and police officers' faces. I seen a lot of expletives, thrown at the police. I've seen a lot of verbal assault. I've seen the police being verbally accosted. However, this says that they're never supposed to allow their personal feelings to influence conduct. People were arrested simply because of what they were saying. Section F, it talks about police officers being of service to the community, safeguarding lives in the communities that they patrol. It talks about them keeping the peace and ensuring the rights of all. If that was true, we wouldn't be talking about Cameron Lamb, Donnie Sanders, Ronnie, Ryan Stokes, or countless other people, right? We wouldn't be talking about them. Hell, we wouldn't even have a rally, a purpose to rally in Kansas City if these things were actually happening, right? And I'm naming these things so that we can hold, because it seems to me like the police officers um, have this general practice of wanting to enforce laws that they make up. You know what I mean? Um, it's almost like they don't want to be police officers anymore if they don't have the ability to abuse people or get over on people because you're patrolling people in underserved communities, and what that generally means is uneducated people are being patrolled. Moving right along, in Section I of the Code of Ethics, it says never, these officers are to never engage in cruel, degrading, or inhumane treatment of any person. And we're out here protesting about police brutality. Here in Kansas City, Missouri, we're talking about three crimes that have been committed by police officers on black people. And those are just people that were killed. We don't know how many people have been abused by KCPD, um, abusing people that do not know their rights or people that do know their rights. It just goes it's just one of those things that just kind of goes under the table. You know what I'm saying? The unspoken things that actually do happen. Whereas we're talking about policing in communities of color. Um, and talking about responses to resistance, it says members will not read or write while they're on duty. They will not display cowardice in the line of duty where the public is put in danger, right? So basically, you want to deploy your weapons um, or use lethal force if there's other bystanders around, if there's harm or risk to do harm, I'm sorry, to bystanders that are standing around. Use uncivil, harsh, profane, or vulgar language even under provocation. Let me read that again. Officers are not supposed to use uncivil, harsh, profane, or vulgar language even under provocation. This is in their book. This is in their book. So when someone tells you to shut the fuck up, when someone is being vulgar, when someone is being harsh, they're operating outside of their guidance, outside of their policy, outside of their procedures. Section 205 deals with the residency requirements of the Kansas City Police Department. It also has some language in here talking about unincorporated communities. I don't know why that language is in there. But my recommendation is that we need to go to our city council people and recommend that these officers live in the areas that they're going to be patrolling. So if you're in East Patrol, you live somewhere in that district. If you're in South Patrol, you live somewhere in that district. If you're in North Patrol, you live somewhere in that district. Period. Screw this. Well, I work in East Patrol but live in North Kansas City, damn near in Liberty. You don't patrol Liberty. Liberty doesn't even look like, or the area that you live in doesn't even look like the area you patrol. If you are too good to live in the areas you patrol, I say that you shouldn't patrol those areas because you're saying that you're better than the people or you're above the environment. Your well being and welfare is not conducive to that environment. But civil rights violations, it talks about this in the policies and procedures that are found on kcpd.org. Um, talking about civil rights violations, there's a lot of them in here. So I asked or encourage you to look through these. But a few of them that I've written down was civil rights violations, including taking your property, like so your cell phone, if you're videotaping an incident or a public service in the performance of his or her duty, they just simply can't take your property. Um, to officers that misapply their authority and making false arrests. There is a difference between being detained, being arrested, being stopped, and we have rights when it comes to that as well. And I'll get to that. There's some work that we need to do in terms of when the police are involved in these incidents where there's been a clear violation of someone's human rights. They've insulated themselves in only mentioning a couple of entities that these investigations will be picked up by. All right, but I think that one of the additions on here should be if there is a violation of someone's civil rights, if there is an officer involved incident whereas the officer used lethal force and it resulted in someone's death. I think the family's legal team should have access to whatever information is coming out of the police department. I also think that the civil rights attorneys need to be attached to this thing. Um, it needs to be an entity outside of law enforcement or the judicial um, entities within the local government structure, local or state government structure. Um, when these officers are involved in shootings, I want to note that one of their subsections, subsection 5, it talks about the member or the officer being placed on administrative leave with pay. I feel like anytime an officer is placed on administrative leave for disciplinary action or disciplinary concerns, it should be done without pay, pending the outcome of the investigation. Now, if you're cleared and you return to work, you can get your money. You can get all the money that you would have been paid, but that's going to be retroactive while we conduct our investigation. I imagine that they would actually speed up some of these investigations as well. The officers would be looking to speed up these investigations, being that your pension and your pay has been placed on hold pending the outcome of the investigation. If you are innocent, you want this to move along as fast as the family that's lost a loved one. Um, so instead of suspending any of them, I would really move that these officers be terminated. I would really move to these officers being terminated. Um, procedures, whereas we're talking about use of force, use of deadly force, I feel like there's a lot of different um, steps where it talks about deploying uh, lethal weapons. And one of them it talks about when it's done, what happens after that. There's no proactive approaches or deterrence of someone, an officer being a coward using a lethal weapon, right? I feel like before you even get to that level, you need to be you need to be contacting dispatch. Just the same way you can call for additional support or backup, or state that you have a person that's less than willing to work with you or to comply with whatever orders you're giving. Just as fast as you can update dispatch on that, you can get on there and say, "Hey, look, officer's life is in danger. Getting, calling for clearance for use of lethal weapon." You know what I'm saying? Permission granted. There should be a series of questions that you should be able to answer while you have this person under control with a non-lethal weapon or with your physical body. I mean, you are taken through an academy and shown hand-to-hand combat, or you have shown competency in being able to apprehend a suspect twice your size or physically hostile to you. Now, I want to talk about the use of force a little bit here because um, through the KCPD.org um, case study, it looks like they are able to use a lateral vascular neck restraint. It also allows them to use a front neck control um, restraint. Now, in the uses of these restraints in both of them, it talks about the inherent risk of the person that is under this distress losing consciousness. Now, we've seen this play out in the George Floyd thing, so the fact that we have something in the KCPD policy and procedures book or manual says that we have some homework to do. This needs to be brought up to your council members because this needs to be stricken from the record. This should not be used here. You don't need to put your hands, your knee, or any types of, you don't need to use anyone's neck to restrain them, right? It also says in here in the use of force that the department members um, are not allowed to strike anyone in the head. But it has some caveats. Said, but now these are the exceptions. There should be no exceptions. You should not be able to punch anybody in the head. You should not be able to strike anybody in the head with your baton, any type of weapon you have on your belt. You should the butt of a weapon. You shouldn't be able to strike anybody in the head for any reason whatsoever. So we got some work to do. There is a lateral vascular neck restraint in the Kansas City Police Department's manual of policies and procedures. Front neck restraint as well. So we need to get some clarification on this. Once handcuffs are on, if it moves or escalates to that point, once the handcuffs are on, the subject is to be set upright or on their side, awaiting transportation, be it a paddy wagon or an ambulance. Let's talk about the use of non-deadly force. We've seen this in the protest. Following the use of non-lethal ordinances, attention, medical attention, will be provided and or obtained. You think that happened during the protest? Seen a lot of cop cars. Didn't see a whole lot of ambulances. Didn't see a whole lot of ambulances out there giving medical attention to anyone that was hit by those non-lethal ordinances, or anyone giving medical treatment who was suffering respiratory distress because of the deployment of chemical weapons out there. When gas is used, you have to ensure that there is fresh air. There was that. You have to also allow for the affected areas to be rinsed with large amounts of cool water. Whenever you can go through a park and you can destroy the baking soda water solutions that were being used to render help and aid to people who were affected by that gas, by that foam, or whatever was used out there, the pepper spray, foggers, and all that type of stuff. All of that stuff was used out there. Before you did that, in the evening, made sure you went through and you destroyed all of the water, the milk, the baking soda water solution. You destroyed all of that. So it says here in your manual, KCPD, that when you are using CS gas, pepper spray, foam, whatever. You're supposed to allow these people to rinse their faces or affected areas with large amounts of cool water. You destroyed water. You went through, you took your knives out, and you stabbed water bottles up. You made sure that equipment was taken from us. Let's talk about being detained or being stopped. This is a very tricky area. And because it's ambiguous like this, listen, it leaves the officer's authority subject to his or her interpretation. So we need clarity on this. We got to do some homework. In section G, it says that an officer can detain or stop someone if they've received information from a reliable source. I don't. It doesn't state who is considered a reliable source, but it says that you could be stopped if an officer receives information from a reliable source that you need to be stopped, detained, arrested, harassed. It also says here that you could be stopped if your reputation is known to a sworn member of law enforcement. So if I have a certain reputation, that means that my civil liberties can be negated. Like you could just harass me anytime you want to based on who I used to be. You know what I mean? Like when does that stop? So you can be harassed every day, basically, without stop, without fail. It says here that you can also be stopped based on information about future movement. So if you are conspiring to do something, if it looks like it, your movements are premeditated, you can be stopped. You know what I mean? So your Facebook post or a social media post saying you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that in 2 3 months. Well, every day leading up to 2 or 3 months, you could be stopped because you put information out there to say that you got some future movements, right? Now it says here a brief stop can take place no longer than necessary to establish probable cause. Now that's a heavy term right there, probable cause, because it says that the officer has to have a set of facts that says that you either have committed a crime because you got something on you that is from that area. Um, there are people pointing the finger at you, but there are some facts. There are a lot of facts that are visibly present, and you either look like you have committed or are about to commit a crime. Okay. Let's talk about what information you have to give. Because we already talked about probable cause. They have to have probable cause. They have to cite the ordinance or the law that you are breaking. Okay. Now they can stop. They can stop anybody. They can stop anybody, and they're going to be able to ask you for your name, your address, and what business you're coming from or going to. Now you don't have to answer these questions. It's not a chargeable offense if you don't answer the question. But here's where they put this in here. If you don't answer the question, you raise reasonable suspicion. Therefore, you can be detained. um, Now, there is something in here that says something about the frisking and things like that because once you've been detained or you got the cuffs on you, the frisk is coming next. Now, here's the thing: once an officer frisks you and search you for weapons, and they find that you do not have any weapons and you're not a threat to their life or their safety, right? You don't need cuffs. You don't need cuffs. Um, like I said, if you don't give them this information, it's not a chargeable offense, but you do raise suspicion. Now, the frisking is only when, like I said, the person is perceived armed and dangerous. Now, the officer's safety isn't a good reason alone. They have to. There's other qualifications for them to be able to frisk you. Um, Now, it says here that the officer can frisk you based on his or her level of experience. It says this level of experience thing in a lot of these ordinances, a lot of these policies and procedures. We need to really go through those because your experience uh, can be good or bad. You know what I'm saying? Your experience could be good or bad, but you're telling me based on this officer's experience, good or bad, they have a right to do what they want to do to me? I don't know about that. You know what I'm saying? I think that that needs to be looked at and changed. Now, the thing about these the friskings, is that the officers cannot go into your pocket unless they have externally patted you down or there is something that's protruding out of your pocket looking like a weapon. Now, say for instance, you know, you got pants on with 4 pockets on it, front pockets, back pockets. If they pat those pockets and they do not feel a weapon, they cannot go inside your pockets. They're only able to extract things out of your pocket when they have patted you down or they visibly see a weapon, right? These things are important for us to understand because we have to now speak from a position of power. There's power in education, there's power in these words. If there is something that infringes upon our rights as humans, our rights as citizens, our civil liberties, the language needs to be changed, but it cannot be changed if we're leaving it on the books. A lot of these things on here have been in place since 2016. I see Chief Forte's name at the bottom of a lot of these ordinances that I'm reading. So that is to tell me that it hasn't been updated. I've only seen Chief Rick Smith's name on one of these documents, and it was talking about the conduct of the police officer, the code of ethics of the police officer, and his name. That's the only place I've seen his name. So these things are very outdated. It warrants our review. It needs to go before our council members for redaction or modifications or changes, because these things were written at a time where our communities wasn't fully inclusive, and it's still not as progressive as we want to be as a society. So does the laws. So we got to get in these books. We got to study this. We got to know it because it's not a matter of when is this going to stop. That's not our primary thing. We know that it's not. It's going to take a while for it to stop, but now it's a who's next movement, and so we got to prepare each other. We got to equip each other with the right information. Now that we're in this who's next movement, so KCPD.org, wherever you live, whatever city, whatever municipality you live in, look up your police department's policies and procedures. Read through those. If there is language in there that needs to be changed, bring it before your councilman or councilwoman, and then take it up the ranks and affect change in terms of progress, and not just change because the words have changed. All right. Love you. Do your job. Stay active. Keep your foot on their necks. So next time.